Hello, hello, everyone. Today is May 19th. It is a Tuesday. This is the SIG Release bi-weekly meeting. It's a meeting that is recorded and available on the internet, so please be mindful of what you say and do. Please be sure to adhere to the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, and in general, just be awesome people. So we've got a few things on the agenda. A lot of them are just updates on some of the work that we've been doing over the past month and change and years and everything. So let's jump into that. So the first one is the base image updates. So we've been working in the background to move the Kubernetes base images over to Kubernetes infrastructure. So that is primarily the ones that we primarily care about are Debian base and Debian IP tables. They form the base of the images that we use for our quote unquote core images. So Kube API server, controller manager, scheduler, Kube proxy, basically the things that you would see in a Kubernetes distribution, the things that you would need to spin up Kubernetes. So that work has been going pretty well, and the cat is here to say hi. Hi, cat. And so at this point, we're over to we're over to Kubernetes infra. We have new versions of the Debian base and the Debian IP tables images. So if you're looking for those are us.gcr.io/kates-artifacts-prod/build image/your image, right? So Debian base. The new version of Debian base is v210, and the new version of Debian IP tables is 12.1.0. So if you are managing a project that requires an updated image, so those images include update to Debian Buster in some cases if you're pre-1, or if you're for Debian base, or if you're 111 or version 11.0.1 or .3 for Debian IP tables. So if you're managing a project that needs an update to those images, please use the new endpoint. We're basically waiting to have Google work out some internal issues around the VDF, or the vanity domain flip. So that is our flip from kates.gcri.io from the underlying registry Google containers over to the new prod Kates infra registry, which is Kates artifact prod. So before I continue, any questions on that? Okay, easy peasy. So the next image is Go Runner, and Go Runner is some work that DIMS has been working on to essentially provide some utilities. It's essentially DistroList++. So there was a KEP opened to rebase all of our base images to DistroList, and some of the images require bugging utilities, debugging utilities, or the means to redirect log output from klog. And because of that, we needed to add some extra bits on top of the DistroList image. So that is Go Runner. Go Runner has merged to Kubernetes master, and we're starting to look at integrating that as the base image for a few of the images that require klog, or require redirecting output, or require some sort of debugging that cannot that we don't necessarily want using Debian base. So as of today, I believe we've migrated Kube API server, and I believe Kube scheduler over to Go Runner as their base image. The Kube, we're still using, for Kube proxy, we're still using the Debian IP table space, and for the controller manager, we're still using the Debian base. The reason for the controller manager using the Debian base is there's some exec-based magic in some of the controllers, specifically, I believe, some of the storage controllers that would prevent us from moving over to a distro-less-like base image. So there's still some ongoing work there. If you want to check it out, I can provide some links later, but if you search for Go Runner within Kubernetes, you should be able to find that pretty easily. Any questions on that? Okay, cool. Yes, no, maybe so. All right, cool. So the next piece of that is, because we're tracking images for the rebasing everything to distroless, I took some time to do an update of the base image exception list. So the base image exception list will give you a run through of the some of the images that we care about. It's not a completely exhaustive list just yet, but some of the images that we care about for releases. I've broken it into release and non-release images, and then also non-org images that were tracked previously. So some of the ones that I was talking about earlier, Debian IP tables, the ones for Kube Controller Manager, Kube Proxy, API Server, and Scheduler, some non-release images that you'll care about, so like etcd and the etcd kind of star images, as well as Fluentd, Elasticsearch, IP Mask, and all of the Kate's DNS, so DNS Mask Nanny, Kube DNS, Node Cache, Sidecar, Add-on Manager, Node Problem Detector, things like that. So check that out to get a better idea of what images we depend on and why. I updated the lists to include whether or not an image is supported, the reason that we're exempting it from needing to be on distro lists, as well as the owners that are attached to it. So like if you click a link for the image name, it'll lead you to the Docker file or to lead you to the folder where the image is built. If you click on the base image, it will link you to the Docker file for the base image in question. And yeah, that's about it for that. So any questions?
I've got a random question that the etcd images reminded me of. Why do we have those ones as opposed to something upstream?
Yes, I wish Dims was here. Give me a second, my doorbell's ringing actually, hold on.
While he's answering his doorbell, I'll go further into what I was thinking. Like one of the challenges we have is managing all the things, obviously. That's part of what our SIG tries to do with all these different images. And we always have kind of a question, should we use this one? Should we use that one? Whose should we use? Who's maintaining it? Do we need to maintain our own? And etcd is like a seemingly standard thing that's kind of everywhere. There's a bunch of pre-existing etcd images out there. Maybe the answer is if I click on the link and go look at the source. Is our Docker file doing something magically unique? Nope. Oh wait, yeah, maybe. So it throws the etcd binaries in user local bin, but it also has a migrate if needed.sh file.
Yeah, so I know Dims is working on some updates to that. I think he's trying to switch that over to Go Runner or something distro list like. From what I heard of your question, is it why do we have an etcd image when etcd is kind of managed elsewhere?
Potentially, like, are we doing something unique? And I popped into the Docker file, and we do add a migrate if needed shell file that is something of ours.
Now, is our image, as far as I know, our image is based on Debian base. Should our image maybe be based on the etcd image instead? Let me.
Actually, oh no, you're right. Yep, base image. Yep.
Yeah, it's base image. It's exposing a few ports and then copying in some of the etcd utilities, as well as that migrate if needed script. Yeah, so let's get up with Dims and see what's up with that. because I know he's got a PR active right now, because we just merged the image building and pushing on the test infra side for etcd. So let's make sure that we're building what we need to.
That migration script has been around since at least 2016. Yeah, 2016. There's this newfangled thing called Kubernetes. I wonder if we might, like, as tests move to newer mechanisms for upgrading, if this script might become less needed and maybe we get to a place where we don't need a custom etcd. But yeah, the meta issue for the future.
Yes, that's also presuming that that'd be presuming that people are okay with using kubeadm.
Yeah, or something other than the cluster directory. I don't know. I think a lot of people really prefer that one, maybe.
Yeah, I think the overall goal is to get rid of cluster, and I think that's been something that we wanted to do for a few years, but it will take time. It will take time. I think we're making strides in terms of moving things over to Kubernetes infrastructure, but yeah, there's lots of interesting stuff in the cluster directory that we can't get rid of just yet. A lot of our end-to-end tests depend on that. Okay. All right. Anything else on this topic? Okay, cool. All right, so release updates. We have, as of today, released 119 beta 0. Carlos, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I'm fighting here with my buttons. I don't know how to press. Okay. Today we, together with Sascha and Daniel, we released the 119, and it was the first time we did without creating the branch. Like since we have the new strategy, and I would say it was very smoothly. No issues so far. I'm doing the final checks.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm really excited to see that we were able to release without cutting that branch. This goes into some of the changes that Sascha and myself made over the last week or so. We essentially this goes into the changes to the release, the 119 release schedule, and because we've shifted a bunch of the timelines, we're essentially moving to cut the release branch at RC, right? So this does a few things, right? This allows us to get rid of the fast forwards that we do, or much of the fast forwarding that we do from the master branch into the release branch. So that was kind of the job of Krell fast forward, or previously branch fast forward, and we're kind of trying to turn down some of that usage. We'll still be doing some fast forwards throughout the code freeze period, from code freeze into some specific boundary that we haven't defined yet. So we should decide when we're going to move from doing fast forwards into cherry pick only mode. And that's we can save that for maybe next week and release engineering to figure out dates for that. But this is a reasonably heavy change to Nago. I don't think that we've done something that big in Nago for a bit. A lot of the beta logic, a lot of the branch cutting logic, a lot of the things that are keyed on the beta release label have been shifted to the RC phase. And I thought a whole bunch of stuff was going to break. So I'm pleasantly surprised and happy about that work. The next piece that we're working on, this kind of goes into the patch releases tomorrow, is fixing a push issue with the official types. So we switched to using types for the type flag for the release. So you can specify alpha, beta, RC, or official type, and based on that type, assuming that you've got the right combination of flags, you'll either release an alpha, beta, RC, or official. For the people who are not familiar with kind of how our releases work, really briefly, depending on the depending on the type that you would specify. If you didn't specify a type, we'd assume it was a pre-release, and by pre-release we mean like alpha, basically. For the alphas, you cut an alpha on the master branch, right? For betas, if you trigger a beta for a release branch that does not exist, it will cut the release branch, in addition to cutting the beta.0 for that x.y, and then also cutting the x.y plus 1.0 dash alpha 0 on the master branch, right? So if you cut the 119 release branch and the 119 dash beta 0, it will also cut the 120 alpha 0 on master, right? Then you can only cut RCs on one of the release branches, and once you cut an RC for x.y, you cannot cut beta for that same x.yz, right? So when I say x.y, I mean the major, minor, and patch versions, just for clarity. So this is a bit of a change in the system. We weren't sure that we would be able to support doing alphas and betas on the same branch, but we can, and that's great. I've done some testing in the background, and the RCs, essentially when we cut RCs, we just cut the RCs. And then when we cut officials, we cut an official as well as the next beta, right? So now we're going into a phase where when we cut the official, we're cutting the next RC0 of that release branch, right? So that's what's set up right now. So I ran into some issues with the release portion, pushing the Git objects in for the official releases. Sascha, do you want to talk a little bit about what you've discovered at this point?
Sorry, about which topic was
it? the official push and the Git push objects failure.
Yeah, so we are now going to debug that failure by just echoing the underlying Git issue. And I'm pretty sure that, I mean, did you really invoke a stage? Because the whole job just ran about 3 minutes from my point of view.
Which job?
So it was the official job and it was a stage, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's I've got links to the I linked in the thread the specific log where the failure was, and then also the release branch, the release blocking issues issue that I opened has a bunch of links to the various permutations I used.
I think right now that we do some sort of commit on the release branch if the release branch got created, and probably that commit is not right in conjunction with the RC or some other commit.
Yeah, it's possible it has to do with the release commit or the change log being added as well. So yeah, I think with the verbose Git output, you should get more information, but it is likely to do with the release commit, because we were doing those release commits to ensure that so we're essentially doing an empty commit for people who are not aware of this. We're doing an empty commit on the release branch because we do 2 cuts in conjunction, essentially, depending on the type that you select. The release commit is essentially to ensure that the beta, the official release, and then the next beta are not cut on the same commit, because that is leads to interesting things with like our publishing pod and some of the CI tests, and also like the CI Kubernetes build, which determines CI Kubernetes build pushes a CI version of the release artifacts that are then consumed in our end-to-end tests. So we needed to ensure that those are two separate commits. Maybe we'll get to a point where we don't need to, but for now, that's where we're at. So any questions on that? Cool. So for the betas, just going back to the base images real quick, I think that it's worthwhile highlighting that this is the first real Debian base and Debian IP tables bump that we've done in a bit for the beta 0 that just came out, as well as there is also a bump to kubectl 113.9.5. And also, if you take a look at the release notes, you'll see in addition to the release notes, thanks to Sascha, there's the dependency report that's outputted in our release notes now. So you can see what dependencies were added, modified, and removed in Kubernetes as a result of that. And that that dependency report is now part of CREL changelog, as well as CREL release notes. So I believe that, Sascha, would I be correct in saying that anybody who decided to use our release notes tool could now generate a dependency report for their project?
Exactly, yeah.
Really, really awesome work. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. I'm using in the projects in my company here. The release notes.
Open
Thanks,
source.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So I also use the release notes for CAPC, and I'm starting to see it being used in a bunch of other projects within the Kubernetes ecosystem. So hat tip for that. That makes writing release notes a lot easier. All right. All right. Next up, updates from Marky. So Marky, Veronica, Marco, and maybe a few other people are working on Triage Party. And Triage Party is a cool tool that you may have seen us demo in a release engineering meeting that allows us to a little better triage the open issues for our SIG. There are some categories and a YAML file, of course, for configuration where you can define exactly how you want to do triage, whether it's on daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis, and the kind of indicators that you want to pull in. So whether it's an issue that has high comment volume, or an issue that has multiple reaction emojis, or things that have not been touched in X amount of days. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. I see Veronica has her hand up. Veronica, you want to chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, just some quick comments. What we're exploring right now is how to host the infrastructure. We have been talking a little bit about all the new things. We have been playing with it because, as far as I understand, the previous version was not as friendly. I mean, I comment this because I saw some informal discussions and like, yeah, this tool can sounds nice, but yet more tooling can add overhead, like installation process, and like we really don't need more noise and more tooling for things, especially the ones that are supposed to help on triaging and stuff like that, like make our lives easier. Like we don't want the opposite. So as far as we can tell, this is definitely not the case. Like in case someone has had any previous experiences with this tool, we can say that it has been like a smooth experience for us so far. And now we're exploring the options just for the infrastructure. Yeah, so in case you have any questions, let us know. Ping us in the Slack channel.
So what do we know about infrastructure today, or what are we thinking infrastructure-wise today? Because we have a few options.
That is exactly our question. So
Okay.
yeah, we're right now with Minikube just playing, and yeah, so the topic for our next meeting is going to be that. So I don't know if you have more insight on this, Marco.
No, you said it very well. Like we are trying to see, Mark is going to check with the Minikube folks how we can host it and how they host it. So maybe we can use that as some recommendation, but we still pretty much don't really have idea how we can do it.
So
Yeah.
I think eventually I'd like to see, and this kind of goes into the wider triage discussion for Kubernetes, and for other projects within the our org structure. I think what I'd like to see is one global triage party, right, or a kind of front end where similar to, if you think similar to Test Grid, right, where you're able to kind of click in by group, whether it be a SIG or working group or sub-project, and see the various boards, right? So, and this also leads to eventually what I'd like to see is some infrastructure in place for SIG release, for release engineering, so that we can, we currently kind of depend on the release managers, release engineers, to do staging and releasing kind of in the background, right? So say they're testing a fix. They may be testing the fix, thinking about the different permutations, things that can go wrong, and trying to test different the scenarios. And right now that's a manual process. The reason that we don't, the reason that we haven't automated that today is that, I mean, really security implications, right? So when we're doing, yes, Tim. So when we're doing the releases, the release, the GCB runs have access to the GitHub release token, right? So some of the things that some of the things that I'm worried about is potentially exposing that token in a place where the group of people who manage the infrastructure do not have that level of, or should not have that level of access to the various credentials that we're using, right? So figuring out how to do that in a good way. What was suggested is that maybe eventually SIG Release gets their own build cluster. And I think that is something reasonable to do. But right at this moment, I'm a little concerned with Veronica, to what you were saying, the maintenance overhead. Like, I don't personally want us to have to maintain a Kubernetes cluster.
Right.
Right. I would like to opt into a service and be able to run things on that.
Okay.
So,
yeah. We'll update you on anything that we think about. And we're, of course, open to any options in case. Thank you, Tim, for mentioning the meeting. We'll make sure to explore every single option.
yeah. All right. So any questions on that? Okay. So the next bit of update from Marky's side, and Veronica, since you're here, you want to jump in on the Go updates?
I actually don't have a lot of context on that, so.
Okay, cool. So we're looking at doing 2 updates to Go. The first is, I guess I'll give an update on my side. I've been working on the Go 114 bump in master. So we've kind of dragged this PR along from 114.0 to 114.1 to 114.2. There are various things that are going wrong. Scalability wise, there were some concerns on the Go side. Some of the functions are causing nodes in scalability situations to get wedged. So it's not something that we could have merged at that time. It looks like the various fixes for that have merged. So again, kind of dragging this PR along. Now that the next thing that we're waiting for is an update to bbolt, etcd bbolt, which is one of our dependencies. That seems to be moving along, but I'm going to ping them for status this week. And once that's in, since we've now moved from 1.14.2 to 1.14.3, I've done the cube cross updates and promotions in that PR. There is now a slew of Bazel failures, which I'm not going to say anything, which is going to require an update to repo infra, I believe, to support the new version of Go within their Bazel Go rules. And then once that's fixed, I'll retest on that PR. If there are more Bazel issues, we'll try to knock those out before coming back to the bbolt side. And yeah, exactly. Yeah, no one has video on because they're all cringing about Bazel right now. So once we figure that out, I mean, the 1.14 one is something that I want to land for 1.19, but we're kind of dragging the PR along in the meantime, and I'm making sure that that gets rebased and updated from every week or two. From the Go 1.13 side, Go 1.13, since it's a patch release, it's a little easier for us to get that done. So right now, Marky and Veronica are tasked with doing the Go 1.13 11, or they were 10, but now 11 updates. Basically, I've got some cycles this week, so I'll be working on documentation around the Go updates. And once that's out, I think y'all should be clear to start with the 1.13.11 updates, Veronica. Okay, any questions on that? All right, sweet. So I've been yapping a bunch. I'm going to kick it over to Tim for the annual support update and kind of the work that Working Group LTS has been doing.
Briefly, there's two parallel conversations going on. The working group has been in discussion for about 2 years on if, when, how we could increase support beyond 9 months. As of January, there was consensus that yes, we would start that for 1.19. So the KEP merged as provisional, is that April sometime last month? And we're looking to bump it over to implementable state. Again, still just for 1.19 and newer, but also over the last month, conversation started up on, there's a lot of different contexts now compared to discussions over the past 2 years. Should we increase that to also cover 1.18, 17, and 16? So I've decided based on discussions over the last bit to try to leave those as two separate issues, so that if somebody wants to support 1.19 and newer, they can. And I feel like we have general broad consensus that that's okay. But there have been some people on the fence, myself included at times, it's a tricky balance. But the 1.18, 17, 16, I'd like that discussion not to derail at least making progress on the 1.19 part. So both of those are, I need to post the, once we address one of the questions there on the PR, but post today a lazy consensus for Friday also on the KEP moving to implementable. But one or two, well, I guess there's 4 combinations possible there. 1.19, yes. 1.18, 17, 16, yes, or no on either or both of those as well. But probably it's looking like by Friday we'll have a lazy consensus on some of those, and we'll see which. But basically, I think we're ready to do this. Less people, or almost, I think not even less people. There have been no objections over the last month's discussion. People who'd been objecting in the past are seemingly more comfortable now and enough to at least let this go ahead and see what happens. So that's roughly it.
Yeah, so and I think that that is somewhat an artifact of the work that we've been doing, the release engineering side. Definitely, like we have, I think, raised confidence in the tools that we use. We've established some process around the things that we do day to day, and so for I think when we were bringing up the 119 schedule update. A few people brought up some good points about like when do we do this or when can we do this, right? Because I had initially mentioned 115, and so things to note about the 115, 116 boundary. 115 is currently on Go 112.17, right? And we've just, this is post discussion. We've marked 115 as out of support officially as of the last patch release cycle, I believe, right? So yeah, so the big thing was using a non-supported version of Go was kind of a no-go for us. The maintaining something or having to consider backporting fixes or maintaining our own fork of Go is not really an acceptable path to go down. There are concerns around maintaining the infrastructure that our tests run on for an additional branch for longer. Yeah, so I think, and then you look at the 116 side, and the 116 introduces a set of deprecations for APIs, right? So we were, Tim and I were chatting about this, and we were like, is this a good boundary, right? Like it seems like a good boundary to give people more time to address those deprecations, and moving into 116, 17, 18, those APIs don't get any less deprecated, right? So the idea in all of this is to kind of freeze everything, and we were talking about this in when we were talking about updating the schedule, bringing us to a point where, or not just us as as contributors who work on the underlying infrastructure for releases, but also the SIGs that we support, the reviewers and approvers that are pushing PRs for all of these branches, also the consumers of this, right? So whether they be a vendor or a customer or someone that you would consider a customer if you're in a vendor position, having to move from Kubernetes version to Kubernetes version is, sometimes an involved process, sometimes doesn't happen multiple times a year. So giving consideration to everything that's happening in the world, trying to slow that down for people, and just giving that broad overview for people who were not a part of the original chats. So yeah, I think that based on the updates to the KEP, I'm in favor of everything from 16 up to 119. I believe Tim, I had mentioned a lazy consensus of Thursday on the PR update, but I reread your email and I see that you mentioned a lazy consensus of end of day Friday already. So we should just reiterate that, and I think Aaron had a few questions that we have to answer on that one before moving forward.
And we've had a little discussion on Slack and on GitHub, and I think I have clarity. I'm about to push another sentence or paragraph on the thing, and hopefully that addresses Aaron's question. And yeah, then I'd send out the email saying lazy consensus on Friday also, and then people can sort of choose their own adventure, both or only one or neither, if there's somebody yet to come out with a major issue.
Sounds good. So if anyone has questions, comments, concerns, feel free to voice them here or on the KEP update. All right.
Bump briefly the cherry pick request, because I see prameshj is on the call, and I know like if they pop that on the agenda, and I don't want to run out of time.
Yeah, prameshj, you want to go for it?
Hi, yes, thank you for bringing this up. I put this here just to find out if these cherry pick requests, the PRs that I've linked, are okay to qualify as as a cherry pick, or is that like a feature and we only have to do it in 119? Just for some context, the PRs change the behavior of how kubedns pods are going to be scheduled. So without the change, the pods could be scheduled on same nodes if you have a large number of replicas, and the change adds anti-affinity. So there'll be more effort in scheduling to actually spread this around. And this was introduced maybe 115, Kubernetes 115. And at the time, there were some scalability concerns, but there have been improvements in scheduling the features since. So it was verified that putting this change back now is acceptable. So I merged it into 119, but I was hoping to see if I could also put it into 118 and 17, since it's more a stability and could be considered a bug fix than a new feature.
Yeah, I was going to say this feels like a kind of buggy regression fix as opposed to pure feature. And that is, I mean, that's kind of like the game we play when we review patches, whether or not it's a pure feature or a bug. I would call this a bug fix or a regression fix. And so the one thing to note is that we have passed the cherry pick deadline for this cycle. It sounds like something that I would let slip in. Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. It's always a first indicator when there's a bug or an issue that's been around for a while and it's marked feature, and the patches that come in around it are also marked feature. It's just sort of a flag that we key off of, and really it's not just to say no directly, but to start a conversation. And the response on GitHub between you, Prameshj, and Wojtek now as well, I think that allays any fears. Just having remembered like the complexity in the past and wondering about the scalability issues, seeing that Wojtek is saying like, yeah, let's do this, I think that covers any concerns that I have. And it's also a normal pattern for something that feels like a feature to also end up being a bug. There's often a gray space between the two, and as time goes by, something that felt like it was going to be fixed and be called a feature to have the fix starts feeling like, we just need this bug fix. This one, I don't know if it's quite exactly that case. But it's been sort of a dance back and forth, and I wouldn't want to be finding out that after we ship this, we've reintroduced something. So I'm okay merging, but I think because we're past the cherry pick deadline, we're about to release tomorrow. We have other CI issues on 118 and 17. I would like to wait until Thursday to merge it to the branches, and then we also have time to see over the next month if anything else crops up from testing against master or on these two branches, and we can deal with any other fixing that might be needed over the next month before the likely June patch release. Does that feel reasonable?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. We have a plan.
One small thing is that kubedns is also not the default on any of these versions. So likely there'll be fewer tests affected, but June is still fine.
Okay.
Cool. So
Thank
one
you.
question about this. I'm noticing a 117 fix and a 118 fix. Do we want this for 116 as well?
No, because the scheduling team mentioned that the improvements are only 114, 117 and after, so we don't want to move it behind further. Yeah.
Do you mind just mentioning that on the open cherry picks so we have record?
Okay, let me do that.
Cool, awesome. So
thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. So question for you, since you're here, can you give us kind of like a state of affairs on the DNS stuff? I was starting to poke around in the DNS repo, and I noticed that you were on some of the PRs as well. So I'm kind of curious, as we're working through I don't know when you joined the call, but as we're working through the base image updates, we also want to make sure that we hit the DNS images and make sure that they're all pushing to the Kubernetes staging repos and going through our promotion process. So can you give me like an idea of like what the current state of affairs is?
Sure. Yes, and I did see the update in this meeting about the base image, and I also reviewed the PR for the DNS images to use the latest Debian base. That went in yesterday. We are actually still using the images off of GCRIO Google containers, just because the K-star GCRIO flip is not fully done. I was just waiting for that to kick in. But we do have the automated build process that pushes to the new staging repo. I did set that up in the test infra. So that's happening after every commit. We just don't use that. We just don't promote it and use it everywhere just yet.
Okay, I see. Would you be opposed to me kind of scanning through the repo and maybe pushing some PRs to clean some of that stuff up too?
Sure, no problem. Yeah.
I know
I can sync with you. If,
yeah, let's do that. I know that there's an active PR that I reviewed around the Debian IP tables push. So I think it sounds like someone has more work to do on that one before it goes in.
Correct. So the Debian IP tables one, the issue was that with that latest IP tables version, adding rules to a particular table, I think to the raw table, wasn't happening correctly. It was fine with everything else, but I don't recall exactly why, but I do know that the person who opened the PR investigated and found that it was actually a bug fix, but we are just waiting for that bug fix to be part of an official image in IP tables.
Oh, an official IP tables image. Is that related to the IP tables legacy NFT wrapper fix that was done?
Probably. It's NF tables that the NFT command, if you use that, it doesn't work. But if you use the legacy command, it works. But I do not know the details of the exact fix. It is there in the PR.
Okay, all right.
Link somewhere. But yeah,
all right.
it's just that we're waiting for that fix to be picked up in an official image and then use IP tables, Debian IP tables, rather than using Debian and installing IP tables.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'll try to find some time to sync up with you. Maybe it'll either be later in this week or maybe next week, if that works.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, you can ping me on Slack or open an issue in DNS repo. Either works.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.
And
also GA node local DNS in 1.18 in open source.
Okay, cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to the meeting, Prameshj, and thank you for the conversation. This is really helpful to us.
Thank you so much. Same here.
Go team. All right. So before we go into KEPs, do we want to? Is there anything else people want to cover? We got a few minutes left. Okay. All right, so KEPs, kind of going through now that we've moved to this, you may have seen some updates from the enhancement subproject. So myself or Bob or John or Jeremy talking about the directory-based structures that we're starting to use for KEPs. So enhancement team should be a little bit more familiar with this now. But essentially what we're doing is kind of moving, refactoring some of the KEPs to, or all of the KEPs eventually, to be in this directory structure where you have like a README, and then you have what was previously the kind of the front matter for the KEP is now in a separate kep.yaml within that folder. The KEPs are now named whatever the KEP title was, but the enhancement issue number dash whatever the KEP title was is the name of the folder, and then within the folder is a README and a kep.yaml. So as I was going through doing some of the updates, I kind of rejigged the SIG release ones to fit the format, and I noticed that there are a set of KEPs that we have that have not seen some updates in a bit. So those KEPs are linked here. It's and the relevant tracking issues, 1729, 1731, 1732, 1733, and 1734. So KEP's about the rebase images to distro lists. We talked about that earlier. Publishing packages, I believe this has to do, I think this was written up by Hannes a while back around our Debian RPM pushes, possibly. And other artifacts that we maintain on the release side. Same with the artifact management one. I think that was done by Brendan a while back. Release notes, I think release notes, we have some tangible updates on that one, but we haven't reflected them back in the KEP. And then finally, the Kate's image promoter KEP, which has been kind of being worked on by the working group Kate's Infra, Linus, Tim Hawken, and a few others on that team. So TLDR, what I'd like to see is us update our KEPs. I think our KEPs are more likely to go stale because we tend to manage things that are out of tree, tracked out of tree, right? So not actively pinged on by the release team. These, like, we didn't have enhancement issues for this. So now we have enhancement issues for this. We need to find the relevant owners for these things. I feel, based on the work that Dims and I have been doing, that the rebase images to distro listing is probably in our court. Sascha, are you fine with taking the release notes one?
Yeah, sure. Do we already have pull requests for that?
We already have an enhancement issue for it.
Yeah.
Give me a day or so to get all of the enhancement issues updated, and at that point you can shift over as the owner, update the KEP metadata and all that stuff, and give a proper update from the provisional state to where we are now, because we're definitely in the post implementable kind of near implemented state. And then for the Kate's image promoter, I think Linus should be the owner for that one. Publishing packages and artifact management, that's kind of shared responsibility for release engineering. I'm happy to take that on. Tim, I think you should probably be an owner for those two as well. Does that sound cool to everyone?
Absolutely.
Sweet. All right. All right, that is our agenda. Do we have, hey, actually, sorry, we should have done this at the beginning of the meeting. Is there anyone new here who wants to say hi?
I'll say hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Ricky. Yeah, longtime Kubernetes user and really just interested. Also used to work with Stephen way back when.
So Ricky is my old boss. And I was like, hey, why don't you come hang out on the call? Welcome, Ricky. I hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyone else want to say hi?
I'll say
hey,
hi.
I know, please go ahead.
I guess I'll say hi. I'm one of the bug triage shadows for this release. I'm also a longtime Kubernetes user, and I participate in the release process for the last one as well. But I don't think I've ever officially said hi to this particular group of persons. So, hi.
Hi, welcome.
Hey.
Hi everyone. My name is Harsha. I work with Nabarun in the enhancement stream as an enhancement shadow. Been a Kubernetes user for a while. I work with Cisco. It's good to be with you guys.
Welcome.
I don't think
I introduced myself either on the release team call, but I'm a doc shadow. My name is Zachary Estrella. I've been using Kubernetes for about a year and a half right now, and yeah, excited to be here and just kind of follow along the whole path into the release.
Welcome. Nice to see you hanging out. You're Ceph's bud, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Nice to see you and meet you in person too, Stephen.
Anybody else before we go? All right. Well, thank you as always for hanging out with us. We have this meeting bi-weekly, the release team meetings, if people want to hang out on those, and the release engineering meetings, which are at the same time, alternating weeks with the SIG release meeting. So catch you at one of those or on Slack later.
Adios. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Hi, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye.